All right. Wild and well, listeners, we are so glad that you are here. John and Becca coming in on a Wednesday morning with He Said, She Said. This episode is family ties. Those are the relationships that we have lots of emotions about. So we will get to those in just a minute. But really, it's this idea of both our brains and our bodies when we feel safe and connected. I'm going to calm myself because I'm so excited to see you, John, that I'm
It's been too long.
is that when we feel safe and connected, our stress hormones lower and our oxytocin rises and our nervous system learns how to operate. When that doesn't happen, we learn anxiety from the earliest, or we're modeled anxiety from the earliest ages. We're modeled a lot of dysfunction from the earliest ages, and none of us are given a blueprint. Come to find out, once I became a parent, I learned that very quickly that there's no blueprint given. But nonetheless, we will get into family ties and the moments of safety, attunement, repair, some of those details. But before we get there, let's go into high-low Buffalo. What are you coming in with as far as your high of the week?
This one is not, it's not very exciting, but there's been, this is reality. There's been a laundry basket of folded clothes by my front door, of all places, for like 4 days now. And I've been playing chicken with that. And it is absolutely should be on me. So, in my defense, I'm still like on crutches, kind of hobbling around, but I can figure out a way to get it to the room. Miriam folded it. That one's on me. So I know what I'm doing after this call immediately after our time today. Um,
So it's already folded. It just needs to get put away.
it's folded. It's like organized by whose it goes to within piles within the basket. It just needs to be taken back. Naming it is the first step, Becca. How about you?
Naming it is the first step. And those were eyes of an auntie shaming you. No, I'm just kidding. Of a friend.
This is acceptance and accountability of the laundry basket. That's what playing chicken's all about, you know?
I love it. Okay, so listen to this. Because we've started playing chicken, because you've started this as an episode segment for us, Nick is like so on top of it when something happens. However, we were in Cayman Islands. So my high is we've been in Cayman Islands, beautiful. My family's gone there for a long time growing up. That was kind of like an oasis for us, which just gorgeous. If you haven't been there, save money up to go there. It's so worth it for anyone who's listening to this. I know you guys have ties there as well. But we were there and two highs. I'll get into the second one, but the first one it goes into playing chicken. Laughing because our Airbnb that we were at didn't have recycling. However, my family loves LaCroix. We had box of pizza at some point. We had all sorts of things that normally we would recycle. And so sure enough, that art sculpture that comes out in our house grew on vacation. And Nick looks at me and he just shakes his head, gives eyes to the art sculpture as I'm adding more things to it. And then he just walks away. So guess what? Until the last day, we had a recycled art sculpture and then we ended up having to trash it all. But it is what it is. So that exists outside of here in my daily living as well.
Yeah, when you're in that scenario, it's just I forget how to go find a trash can. You know, the Airbnb with a group of friends or with family, like the trash going out is a much bigger task than it actually is.
Yes. Well, and we recycle a lot at home, and I've come to realize not recycling is so easy. I'm like, oh, that takes away much more mental load. Just dump it all in the same thing. So, anyways, we could get into that at some other point. Mine, and this is totally a mom brag, but I'm so proud. We went snorkeling, and Lulu, 3 years old, jumped in. She was with me. We like held her. She was on my back or like different things. She jumped in and she got to see stingrays and she got to see animals and fish. And I'm like,
Yeah.
good on you, girl. So older brother, far more cautious. I get it. He's also only 4. His was the trajectory that I thought most kids. His was my trajectory when I was that age. Homegirl wanted to swim with fish, wanted to see stingrays, and she did it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. No, this is good. Don't let the narrative of there's sharks in the ocean, don't swim in it. You can't let that take over, you know? Get in the water, see the good stuff before you worry about like the sharks in the water. That they are there, but the disproportionate emphasis on sharks in the water prevents people from enjoying it. So way to go.
Yeah.
Encouraging the courage, Becca.
Well, and we talk about choosing to be brave. And so I'm, like, going in first, and I thought I'd sit back on the boat with them. My dad has some back problems right now, so he was like, "I'll stay on the boat," and Lulu was like, "I'm going in, my cousins are go people are going in, like, I'm gonna go in," and I'm like, "Nick, we're going in," and so she made me braver because I like to say I have a healthy respect for the ocean, but I'll call it what it is. My most irrational fears, rational too, but irrational also are around the ocean because I'm like, "I don't know what's down there, that's their space, not mine." So, all that to be said, I got to see some really cool animals because my daughter chose to be brave.
That's great. I love it.
Yeah, flip side is that cold keeps getting passed around, so take one, give one, take one, give one. That's where we are again.
Carousel. The carousel of sickness, it continues. Yeah, again, we were talking about this, but I witness sometimes the ceremonial passing of germs from one household to another. My daughter picks up the water bottle from the other child's. That was the moment. She's patient zero. And then we've seen it happen where we give it to another family. And there's nothing, it's like watching a wreck in slow motion. You're like, no. So I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, that's the exact phrase I was gonna say. Car crash in slow motion where I'm like,
Yeah.
"Don't grab the water." Just enjoy it,
Yeah.
girl, and you know what? Just go ahead and grab every other medicine you need from the cabinet too, right in this moment.
Yeah, no, I hope that, momentary thirst quench was worth the entire family being sick for 3 weeks. Go off, queen.
Alright, what about you? Where are you coming in?
My high was so we're selling Girl Scout cookies. Thank you for being a supporter, Becca.
My
Much
pleasure.
appreciated. Also, thank you for placing an online order. What I found is that when you have to do the local delivery, it's way more work.
Mm.
Now we can just you order, we ship it, they ship it right to you. You have to pay the shipping for that. I'm sorry, but true, our troops thanks you for that. But
Support the troops. Support the
yeah,
troops.
so this is the first year selling Girl Scout cookies based on my daughter's age, and we've worked 3 different booths, and to, to see her progress from the first booth where she couldn't speak up, I mean, could not raise her voice. I can hear her from 6 feet away to now the third one. She's like, you know, opening a sales presentation as people are 20 feet away. She's waving signs, getting cars to stop. She's learning ways to upsell. Her go-to is my favorite is a peanut butter patty. So it's been really cool to see the progression. This is exactly what selling Girl Scout cookies is about. And it's been fun to witness that across just three sessions. We have not hit our quota yet though, so we're still on the hunt. And frankly, we need to hit that quota. I just need the mental freedom that is done. My low is like it's been a grind. Work has been really ratcheted up. Just now weight bearing, still putting a lot on Miriam, still trying to keep up with a 1 year old. So it has been stressful and it's been hard. And we are taking like trying to be mindful of the moments where it's not, or it's fun, or it's funny, because it's been a grind the last 5 weeks, 6 weeks. So that's real. My buffalo is to bookend our conversation about reality TV shows. We said in the fall, Great British Bake Off was on. Well, we've come back around to the spring where Alone is back out. So Alone again, to refresh your memory, the best, maybe the second best reality TV show ever made behind the Great British Bake Off, but it's an amazing season. They are way up in the Arctic Circle, 10 people living off the land, 10 experts in survival, by the way, and the drama ensues. It's amazing. So Miriam and I have been binge watching that. We fall asleep like halfway through the second episode on the couch because we're so cooked by the end of the night, but we go back and rewind the next day, and we're not quite done yet. But I encourage you to check it out.
I love that. Would you have to be paid? And if so, how much to be on that show? Or would you gladly volunteer if they asked you to be on there?
So the prize is $500,000, and yeah, I mean, I think they're all intended to be paid. Yes, I would need to be paid, and I think I told you I give myself 3 days, and like I'm an outdoors person, but being an outdoorsman or woman is not the same as being a survivalist. Um, I wouldn't make it far. I'm gonna own that. Okay, I'm gonna own that.
make it till the sun goes down and they're like, "All right, where are we sleeping?" I'd be like, "Take me to my lodge."
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought the cameras are down so I can go sleep somewhere else.
Yeah. Where's the cabin?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's me. I love a good outdoors. I can be dirty. I'd be glad to hunt. I'd be glad to do a lot of those things. Very grateful for the earth that we have and the resources there. And also at the end of the day, I want to shower and I want to sleep somewhere cozy. So that's just my 2 cents. But that's awesome. We haven't yet to watch the show, so plugged for Alone for a date night for Nick and I. So thank you for that. Mine, and this will connect us back into family ties, but it's been a couple of weeks. It's actually been a month, but we had a family member for the listeners here. John and Jen have held beautiful space for me over the last month, as they do always. But we had a family member die by suicide, and it's not as raw. It's still grief shows up how it does. And so in certain moments, right, big tears and that emptiness and stuff, and maybe gazing out into nothing. But most of the time now, and especially as we talk about family ties, the celebration of life was beautiful. All of us cousins were together, which was so fun. My brother flew in, and like it's that juxtaposition of the most life I know grieving over a life lost. And as we talk about family ties, my buffalo was February was really hard. It was a grind for us too, and for me, and especially stepping into that space and holding that space for others while then I was held by you and Jen and then my family and stuff, of course. If I can say anything, my buffalo is for us to find how to have fun in life and for us to find resources and access to supports and remembrance of we're not in this alone, right? That's why you and I got into this, John. And you, when it first happened, and I called you, you're so gracious, and you're like, when do you think you'll share? And I'm like, I don't know. And then now it's like put a fire in me more to just be like, we're doubling down, we're tripling down, we're quadrupling down to saying like, you matter. You're loved. You serve a purpose the world needs. So, for anyone in the community, if you are struggling with suicide or thoughts of it, or like life is not worth it, please hear me say and hear us say that it is so worth it. You are part of this family. The world is better with you in it. Let me say that very clearly. The world is better with you in it. And so if you need resources, 988 is one resource. There are many others, but we will give plugs for those throughout the weeks to come and the years to come and stuff. But please just know, yeah, that's where I've been, and you are not alone in those thoughts. So I wanted to mention that before we get into family ties. Anything else? I know that takes us into a very raw and a very less fun than our intro, but it's also very real. So anything else you have there, John?
Thank you for sharing, and to watch you, who've, I think, very well equipped to grieve and do it the right way. I feel for your family. I wish we could relieve some pain, and that's all. I'll leave it at that. And to echo what you said, which is that there's support for those who need it, and that you matter and people matter. Each one of you is listening matters, and to encourage you, you have those thoughts to go get support.
Yeah. Thank you. And for all the listeners who are in mental health, because I know we have some, also make sure that you are supported too, because when it hits home, I know many of us work with clients who have this or have completed, but when it's with family, it's a whole nother ballgame. And so finding that support. So thank you, John, and to your wife and to your family for being such a dear support to me. I really do appreciate that. It's felt like family, and it's allowed me to be present with my family. So let's get into that then. Of like, I was thinking about why. And this transition is hard. It feels really awkward right now because this is not doesn't do it justice. So I'll just own the awkwardness of it, of then like saying, now how do we come back into a conversation about family when we're affected to the nth degree? Maybe it's illness, maybe it's a loss or a death, maybe it's then the celebration of life, right? On the flip side, where emotions are brought in to help me come out of this space of like the heaviness that I brought us in. Let's go into you sharing some stuff. So I'm going to say something, and then I want you to think of a sibling or a person in your family or chosen family that they really did this for you. So reduces stress response. This idea of a safe connection where your cortisol levels drop and quiets the amygdala. So who's someone in your family that is just chill, is so calming? We are gravitate towards this person. Let's give them a shout out.
You know the answer here, but that my brother, without a doubt. It's like the um yeah, extreme, like, safe connection, um levity. It's perspective inducing as well, because like, if I can articulate why I'm stressed, sometimes I to as I articulated to him, I've kind of arrived at like, okay, this is actually not as important as I think it is, and he helps me realize that and in a mostly nonverbal way. But that's the answer to your question is
I love that because 'cause y'all have played sports together, y'all have lived together, right? You guys have done life together. Some of my best memories, right? I go back to kindergarten with you. Some of my best memories are with you and your brother together. And the shenanigans, the, like, one-offs that you guys would do with each other, and not in a, like, "Let me throw you under the bus." Maybe those moments happen, but really, you guys have been close proximity-wise, age-wise, but then, like, in spirit or whatnot, and so I think about that for y'all too.
yeah, I think we I mean, we're brothers, so that's the bond of brotherhood, but in particular, the our love of the outdoors, I think, is one piece of that that brings me out of the drops the cortisol levels is because that is, like, frequently the subject of conversation is something adjacent to the things that we love to do, which is something outdoor related, whether it's fishing, could be hunting, could be insert any number of things, but that's evolved too. The most recent thing is, like, building, because he's renovating, his lodge. This is I don't know that I'm offering any help necessarily, but I have experience in this realm as well, and it's been fun to watch the process unfold. It's great to see it's great to see progress being made when you don't actually have to do it.
It's the best kind actually, right? Because you don't have to live through it. Oh, that's funny. Alright, what about for me, I'll go into this. For me, it's my mom. I realize that parental relationships can be really broken. What I will say is the impact that people have, moms, dads, on their children. There are people, and in my life, my mom has done an amazing job of loving us and loving us well and not pulling us away where we were too I'll just say this, I'll use it in the positive. We grew up in a healthy way where we got to experience life, and also we were corrected and directed and all those things in a way that I never questioned whether I was loved, and that alone, I realized as I've gotten older, is not always the case, and so having someone who is calm even when chaos is around and that there's that safety, that is my mom. I mean, people call her Mama Harder, like, she just is a saint. If saints exist, like, there's people she and her sister are 2 people in my life that I'm like, you're the closest person that I know could receive that.
Wait, if I may, I think, like, I think your mom, I think consistency, like, she is so consistent over the years of the way she shows up and which is emotionally regulated very well and calming and caring in my experience.
Shout out to mama, I hope you listen to this episode. You're a
Yeah.
good lady. For sure, and there's probably many people who come to our mind, but I just wanted to go in through a few of these. The next one is let's go into impacts long-term health. Who in your family is, like, and maybe it's you, maybe it's your wife, whoever, but, like, who in your family or chosen family is focused on the long-term health? Why you're thinking, mine would be my brother. He loves, like, figuring out trends, but not in, like, a cheesy way. He's like, "Oh, do you know, like, the macros on this?" Or he is like, "Have you thought about proteins here?" Or have you and he modeled for a long time, and I will say he's in a really healthy place where he's just like, "You matter, you matter, you matter," and also, how can you get stronger? How can you have more energy? How can you so he looks at the long-term effects of life and life to the full, and then on the emotional side of wellness, he's, like, huge on radical acceptance, I had to think the word, but this idea of, like, regardless of the people who watch Fox News in our family, right? Or regardless of the people who watch CNN in our family, where he's like, "I love y'all. We'll disagree on some of these things, and yet I love you and I accept you into this regardless of where you're at in some of these things," and I am continuing to learn from him in that. So that's yeah, shout out to my brother there. What would you say for long-term health in your family?
I It's one of those scenarios if you don't know who in the friend group it is, it's you, meaning me. So I think I'm the one that drives that. I'm probably most oriented towards that. It comes a little bit harder for me, so maybe that's why I have to try because I've been so injury prone, as you know. Played football at a much bigger, much higher weight, so like managing that coming out of school and stuff. So that's me. I mean, most recent example is I put my dad on creatine and electrolytes every morning. It's like it's good for your brain, and you don't drink enough water. Okay.
And it's never too late, right? Like, talk about longevity, it's never too late, right? Like, as he rounds yeah, his final third of life, like, never too late. I love that.
That's right.
Alright, who in the group of 5, right? You have 5 within your now as a parent, Who would you say is the most fun or who's gonna bring the house down? Who is just gonna bring the energy?
Miriam, like, always is going to bring the energy, and she's always fun, and she fills that role every day. If I think about my family dynamic growing up, Elizabeth, my oldest sister, is she will say she's has always said the most unhinged things. She means it. She stands by it. She practices what she preaches, and she's a badass. But she she is um like such a fun sounding board for like our brand of comedy, like my brothers and my brand of comedy. So I think that is we all take their role at different times, but I'd say that is the role that she fills in my family. How about you?
So fun. Lulu, like, homegirl is gonna be able to hold her own through life because she just is fun. We are hearing the latest that I put out, we went to the zoo, and I shared this of we're looking for the grizzly bear, hoping that it's hibernating is visible to us. And so she goes, "Dad, it's not called hibernation, it's called hidernation. The grizzly is hiding, he's not hibering." And I'm like, "Where do you come up with this?" But, like, she's the first to have a dance party. She's the first to just find life. And sometimes it is like, well, I'm guessing in our teen years and in some other years, we're gonna have to rein it in a bit. But nonetheless, like, how fun. And so I bring in these different roles as we go through this just to say I know you've had tension with all of those people you've mentioned. I've had tension with all of these people that I've just mentioned. And yet they hold dear spaces to us. And so I think that that's one of the biggest things when it comes to safety is that it doesn't mean that we're constantly or ever perfect, but even constantly held, it means that we come back to a place of repair or we come back to a place of facing each other. We come back to a place of there are ties that bind us that if we are willing to do the work, and there are things outside of this that maybe we can't touch and maybe we won't even go into, that's abuse and neglect, some of those, but that's not what we're getting into. Talking about regularity right now and regulation is how do we come back to a place when we do feel tension of finding common ground with our kids, with our siblings, with our parents, with our spouses to say, "Oh, I'm so grateful for you there." Or remember when we did this? We've talked about nostalgia, right? And some of our most favorite things. That happens a ton with sibling bonds and coming back to that place of remember when we did this? Or for my cousins, when we all got back together, we were talking about like our grandparents, which both of our grandparents have been long gone. I mean, I'm talking 15, 20 plus years and stuff, but just even thinking about some of those relationships there. So families help us answer these three questions. Who am I? Where do I come from? That gets into that nostalgia or that grounding, that anchoring. And then what do we value? So coming now in, we talked about who am I? What are the roles I play? What are the pieces that make me who I am? And then where do I come from? What are some of the traditions, some of the commonalities, some of the physical places that have shaped me to who I am? And then what do we value? So then going into that space, or take any of those three, I'll leave it there. Are any three of those standing out to you right now? Who am I? Where do I come from? Or what do we value?
Where we come from is really jumps out to me, and as we're talking about family and like why I think why it does relieve stress, why there is a sense of belonging is like there's no context setting needed. They've got the context. They have the too long didn't read because they lived it with you. And I'm referencing now my siblings or and my parents obviously, and then now me as a parent, and now for my wife. There's no context setting needed, and I think that is the difference between a friend, a really even a best friend, and family is it's all understood. And I think in a healthy family dynamic, like that is like a safe harbor and you can go back to that. So where do I come from is the one that jumps out to me. How about you?
I'll go into what we value. I think about growing up and the traditions and that came out of what we value, but my family was presence. From a young age, I share like I am the granddaughter of a plumber and the granddaughter of a CEO. Came from split socioeconomic statuses. My parents got married, met out in Denver, all these things. And yet both of their stories and both of our families are huge on just doing life together and fun. Let's bring that back in. I know your household too. Your household's a good time. It might be crazy, right? Same as my household. There will be things said where it's like, what? Or maybe we get a little too loud or whatever. But what we value is time together, that presence. And I love that you said being understood or just knowing. We've done so much life together. My parents were really intentional about us hanging out and going to each other's sporting events or doing sports together or us traveling together. Very grateful for travel. That alone has permeated the way I see the world. Faith and spirituality. Growing up in a house that said, like, you get to choose, however, this is our choice. And so this is why we would offer this to you. This is what we'd hope for you. Even some of those decisions have put value into my life where I'm like, look, I'm very, very grateful to be a 21st woman, a woman in the 21st century. We'll say that. My grandma, she shares a story, and she's 95. I think I may have shared this in another one, but when she went into her first interview, she worked in business. They said they saw her ring on her finger and they said, "Oh, do you hope to have kids?" She says, "Yes." And they say, "Oh, thank you for your interview. You're good to go." Right on the spot. That is why
Oh my goodness.
RPG and like all these other legal personnel have judges and whom not have made these laws up that say women need to be protected in the workplace. Like that was just 2 generations ago. So I talk about that even as a family tie of like that's fired on the spot now, right? And so I think about these things and I'm like, man, these are the stories that are told to us from the generations before, or then us experience them as siblings, as cousins, as friends, saying like, man, remember? I mean, you've gotten to know my family very well. You've been at our lake house, right? The cat was always a cabin in Nebraska. No bells and whistles, but you know how my dad operates. You know how my mom operates, right? That just is a thing. And that's so fun to get to invite other people into those safe spaces that still have quirks, but into those safe spaces. And so I think that that's something where I'm like, because my parents valued presence and us being around each other, they then invited others into to have a seat at the table. I learned that from them. And so that's now played out into my life as a parent, as a friend, as a spouse of how do I hold space for others and also just say we're going to have a really good time. We may not all agree. In fact, we won't all agree, and yet we're going to do something fun together to bind us or to have a good time. That's what I would say there. And then final thing is let's get into multi-generations. What's your story? Like, were grandparents around when you were growing up? Did you have aunts and uncles? What was your life like? And what is it now for your children?
So I only grew up with grandmothers, and both I think I had 2 years of overlap with my paternal grandfather. But the stories of my grandparents, either from my grandmothers or through my family, are really helpful. I come back to context setting for values. When I hear about my grandmother, serving as a nurse in the Red Cross during World War II, and that's how she met my grandfather. And oh, by the way, she used to throw hand grenades into the pond to shock fish and then pick up the fish off the surface. Like that is my grandmother in a microcosm. She was like my maternal grandmother. And so I just feel pride. I think that there's the connection, multi-general connection feels pride. And I mean, in a healthy way. I certainly wish I could have had a relationship with my grandfathers. And then but I had uncles that kind of served almost like grandparents as well. I learned to be an outdoorsman from my dad. It was reinforced by my uncle and a cousin, my mom's cousin who acted like an uncle, almost like a grandfather. And I think it's such a gift. So I really am excited to have had kids at an age where my kids will grow up around both of their grandparents, all sets of grandparents. Just got to back to the longevity, make sure the grandparents stay healthy. I think that grandparents serve such an important role because when kids hit a certain age, they don't want to listen to parents. They need to hear it from someone else. In fact, their friends' parents will have probably more input and influence on them than I will, and then grandparents as well. So I'm really thankful that my 3 kids have both sets of grandparents, and I know that I benefited from just having grandmothers. But throw 2 more people into the mix, they're going to be um, on a really sound footing, for lack of a better term.
Beautiful. Yeah, we learn that for grandparents that they play a role or aunties and uncles that it's more about presence and less about pressure, right? There's not that disciplinarian. Sure, but by all means, you and your family will get to speak into my kids' lives, or my sister and my brother and their families get to speak into my kids' lives. However, even that is just a different role where it's not mom and dad. To your point, especially as they get older, it's auntie, I can push the boundaries a little bit with auntie, or she gets me, or there's not that performative side where there is a pressure to to fit in with the family and whatnot. And so uncles play a really cool role. They're kind of enigmas when I think shout out to my uncles. I'm very grateful for them too. Like aunties are and grandmas are just as like loving figures in my life, even if they're hell on wheels, like still just these powerhouses and really loving. Whereas uncles are kind of like, you're super cool. I want to get to know you. There's a little bit of distance there of like, who are you? What do you think? So uncles in my life hold a really interesting enigma and I like it.
To that point, like my uncle taught us how to fend for ourselves. How did he teach us? He made us fend for ourselves. Like if we didn't think about what we're gonna have for dinner, and the irony is, okay, so I'm working in his restaurants, but like you come home, make yourself some dinner.
Yes.
Or figure something out at work. Otherwise, it's Twix for dinner, and it's like I had the opportunity to be a little bit feral and realize like, well, yeah, dinner gets onto the table by someone making effort, not it doesn't just get dropped on the table out of nowhere. And so there's an element of self-reliance that was we learned from our uncle because I mean, look, he wasn't going to totally neglect us, but he was going to teach us the things. Whereas like we were focused on these other things, right? We're focused on working hard so that we could go fishing. Was he worried about getting our laundry done? No. So we figured out how to do our laundry. We figured out what we were going to feed ourselves for lunch. And that is a really helpful thing that an aunt or an uncle, in my case, they just care for you in a different way than a parent can, because a parent is doing everything else that they can to make sure everything is right for you. Uncles, uncles have a perspective of that thing doesn't really matter. That like lower hierarchy of needs. I'm not worried about that. I want to show you this other cool thing. So that's a uh, also a huge like a gift is that my kids have a lot of aunt and uncles.
Yeah. Yeah. Through that, I was gonna say, so elders is this idea that they and that they transmit stories and culture and this resilience, right? That narratives that we only know by being with them. And so even as I have similar relationships to my uncle, when you shared that, like Mal and I were joking, my sister and I were joking, when we'd go to one of our uncle's houses, it was so fun. And we didn't know what we'd eat. We'd like go dig through the cabinets to see if there was anything. And guess what? We survived. We thrived even. Whereas we go to my auntie's houses and it's like, what do you want? We're making popcorn. We're making dessert. We're having, you get to make it. Let's have fun. Let's build out. I bought all this stuff. Like flour. Sure. I've got 3 different kinds of flour if you need it. Whereas uncle's house was like, have fun, guys. You'll do great. And we did. And so just as different juxtapositions.
There's some old milk in the fridge and probably some stale Cheerios somewhere.
Smell it. Make sure you smell it to make sure, right? Like shake it a little, make sure it's not curdled.
Don't worry about the expiration date. Those are those are way too safe. You know, you can extend
Yeah.
that another month generally.
Or in my case, the government just puts that on there to make more money out of you.
That's right. That's right.
So there's those fun family ties too. But as we wrap up, just this reminder for us of we all come from somewhere. We all come from families, even in the hardship, even in the brokenness, the loss, the devastation. There's nuances, and both things can be true of grief and love, or grief and understanding, or pain and hope. And so starting to say like, okay, how do I format as an adult what family looks like? How do I come back to a place of gratitude that they birthed me maybe, or that they came to this place of understanding me, or maybe that I grew up in a really safe household? Well, how do I invite others into that then? Because that isn't the trait, that isn't the case for many or for all. And so coming to that place of if I did grow up in a really safe household, how do I allow others to see that? And if I didn't, how do I find that resiliency, and how do I really work through the nuances of family ties? And then coming into 60 Seconds to Centered is pick someone. John and I just shared different people in our lives. I mean, utmost respect for your mom and dad. Love them dearly. I pray another 30 years over their lives, and your family. And you spoke so highly about my mom and my family. And so I know that there's that mutual respect, and just how we've invited each other into our families is amazing. And it's 30 plus years now, which is shows our age, one, but two, just the fun that we're having to reconnect in this. And what I'd say that in that though is 60 Seconds to Centered is text a family member a funny story that you remember of them, a meme that makes them laugh, right? Humor is something in families that only families get. Like there's things in my family that other people would look and be like, y'all think that's funny? And I'm like, yeah, it's dumb and it's silly, but we do. We think it's so funny. What Ace Ventura, that's one of our favorites. Like they're just different things. Coming to a place, text a family member a funny joke, a funny meme, or just something that says thank you. Thank you. Remember when we did this? And it doesn't have to be long, but just a thank you. So 60 seconds to center there. Text someone, let them know you love them in your family. Anything else you have for us, Johnny, before we sign off?
Bro, I got nothing. My ties, yeah, they shape us, they shape who we are. And I think th- I love our conversation because I think all too common the narrative is, it's based in reality. There's family can cause trauma, it can be hard, but this is about a gratitude of accepting and appreciating what shaped us to be who we are, and for a built-in cheerleaders in our lives. And um, yeah, I think you're, as always, this conversation helps prompt that gratitude. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And listeners, thank you for joining. Always, that's why we're here, is to build out the family of Wild and Well together. So it's great for us to be with you. Thank you for listening. Love on your people. We will see you next week. Be well, y'all.
All right, until next time.
Cheers.